Happy Friday. No, there's no sound going out. For some reason, OBS just decided, hey, let's turn everything off. Forgive me, everybody. Headphones, should I do that one? Okay, I think I have a voice. Do you have a voice? No, give me one more moment, everybody. So sorry. I think you have a voice now.
Do we?
There's
I have
Billy
a voice.
Strange.
I have a voice.
I have a voice. You have a voice. All right. Let's start that one over one more time. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Sim with your host, Shaun Cole and Billy Strange. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good time. We are talking about how I've been very sick for a week. Got my coffee, cough drop, water, everything I need to hopefully get through this show. Here with Billy Strange, we are just getting to talk about how I literally spent 7 days without a steering wheel, no driving whatsoever, real car or sim car, for an entire week, and the withdrawal that I was going through. And then we were just turning things over to Billy to find out, did he get to use a steering wheel and what kind of driving he's been doing this week. And that's where we
were
are.
Trying to figure out how big of a withdrawal you were having. I mean, were you going in circles in your bed? What were you doing?
It was causing strange dreams, and I was lashing out at others. Yeah, it was a tough time. Very tough time.
Screw you, everybody! I can't touch a steering wheel.
It was brutal. No, and I had a lot of things that I wanted to be doing on track, so it was even more brutal because it wasn't just like taking a vacation. It's like it's right there in the other room. There's things I want to do, and I just don't have the energy or the capacity to do it.
Right.
So yeah. First thing I need to do is read the chat, someone said. That would have helped. I would have caught the audio mix up a lot sooner.
Well, I was doing hand signals and miming. Yeah. So what did I do this week? My kids and my wife works for the school district. And so this week is spring break.
Oh, that's right.
So we've all been hanging out doing stuff. So I really haven't done any sim racing per se, because on top of that, my band had a show to play on Wednesday night. So we definitely were practicing and preparing, getting ready for that. And tax day was on Monday, which was not good. So spent the day trying to make sure all that was taken care of. So my brain has not been into actually trying to do any sort of competitive anything. And so I remember that Forza Horizon 4 had done an update where they said they had fixed the issue that was basically particular to only a handful of us, which included me, that it wouldn't detect my pedals. And so I was like, I really don't feel like sitting down and putting a bunch of work into setup or anything. So I gave it a shot. It worked. So I, handful of hours, pretty much like an hour or two a night, I just kind of relaxed and goofed around with I admittedly, I like the part of putting parts in the car, and like I try to do the min max thing where if it's only going to reach a certain level, like let's say it's going to reach, and it has the potential of reaching an S2, but it's only going to be a mid tier S2 car, I'll make it a top tier S1 car. And I enjoy like playing around with the different things, trying to min max the car.
Right.
And I don't do, I try to keep the car. I've done this ever since the first Forza. I don't do engine swaps. I don't change the induction, the forced induction, whatever type it has, or if it doesn't have any, I won't add any. I just want to see what it'll go to if I was in my brain actually doing this in my garage.
Right.
So I get a little ridiculous doing that. So yeah, really that's the only thing I've been doing. Had been having a lot of fun with it. You know, I don't expect much from it, so I'm not. Sometimes it feels okay, sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, that it's fun. It's nice. It actually, it seems to run well now. So it seems to be that I remember when I was trying to play it on a gamepad when I just got frustrated and only played like an hour, but I was getting stuttering and that kind of stuff. I don't seem to get the stuttering anymore. So yeah, I think I had enough fun with it. I actually bought that expansion, the something Island, Storm Island, or whatever that expansion was for it.
Right.
So yeah, that's really it. Mainly, it was just.
That's actually quite a testament to how much fun. If you're having enough fun that you actually bust out on the credit card and expanded the game.
Yeah, I did.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I enjoy like the barn finds, and I don't buy cars. I just take whatever car that they're giving me, and because they have that slots kind of thing where it comes up with you get a random car when you hit a level or whatever. And so I haven't been buying any cars. I've just been taking the cars that they're giving me.
The gift cars, sure.
Yeah. And then just upgrading those. So I don't know. I enjoy that kind of thing. And it was perfect because I just didn't have to think. My brain was so focused on the show on Wednesday and, you know, that whole thing. And then, yeah, yesterday was kind of like a recovery day. I just didn't do anything. And then today's Friday.
We're talking Forza Horizon 4, right? That's what you were talking about?
Forza Horizon 4, yes.
Yeah. So I consider all that sucked you and baited you into the game and the way you're talking about enjoying the game. And to me, that is the fun factor category when I'm like breaking down a sim or a driving game. And I guess there's a side of me that feels when there's a lot of that in the game, it gets a 10 on fun factor. But I'm thinking, where's the sim that gets a 10 in fun factor? Like is fun factor one of those defining categories? Like, well, if it's fun, then it can't possibly be a sim. It's got to be a game, you know? And
I wait for the day that those two lines get blurred better.
So do I, because I just, like, if I were to take any of the true Sims and give them a makeover, I think the first thing I do to all of them is be like, can we go play some, like, Forza and Gran Turismo and you know, any gaming driving title to learn how to bait people with things like gift cards, trophies. You know, iRacing has a really extensive, like, you know, award system in it, but it's so buried that you wouldn't even know you were racking up awards. You know, it's like, they do. Half the people in the audience probably just thought, wait, they do? And it's like, yeah, you have an award for the first 1,000 miles. You have an award for the first win. You have an award for all sorts of things in iRacing, but where in the sim is it?
Yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Like Steve Size says, driving the UK is exactly like Forza Horizon, an adventure every day.
Yeah. Well, and that's awesome. You know, and you know, even if I want a sim, that doesn't necessarily mean that I 100% want multiplayer online competition. And fun factor usually also overlaps and is part of a career mode or story mode that coincides with the driving game.
Well, and there's different levels of fun too. You have, you know, fun can be getting in a great race, multiplayer race. It can be your version of fun would be having tuning a car and hot lapping. You know, there's all different levels of fun, but I think we're specifically talking about the quote unquote gamification of something. And, I hadn't touched anything like Forza Horizon 4 since it came out. Like I haven't touched any basically arcade kind of racing game at all since then that I can think of at least. And so it was just nice. My brain was just not in that mode. And rather than force myself to do something, I just felt like, nah, I'm just going to sit here, and since it works, I'm just going to try it and tool around. Since I already spent the money, I bought the damn thing, and then I spent so long trying to get the thing to work, I couldn't return it. And it was like, all right, fine. So I just like, they fixed it. Let me try it. And it's fine. It's fun. It would be nice. I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, right? That's blurring those lines and getting it so where it feels awesome, but has some. You could argue that iRacing has a progression. I don't think of it necessarily that way. I'm thinking, and there, a lot of people these days don't want to try to grind for things or earn things. They just want it there available for them. I pick the car and I go. But to me, that's kind of what single race and stuff is for.
Right.
When you have a career, I want to work, I want to either work up the ladder or whatnot. So anyway, yeah, I had fun with it. I don't know how much I'm going to actually drive it like next week, but I had fun with it this week.
Well, I mean, it only takes a handful of those moments to make it a value, right? I mean, when you think about, if I go to a movie, I'm going to spend $15. I'm going to get 2 hours of entertainment, So when we look at our dollar per minute or hour of entertainment, it only takes a handful of good fun days to justify a $50, $60 title, and even some DLC to add on to it.
Right.
So that's it. That's all you got to drive this week?
That's all I did. Like I said, my brain was really focused on the show, and making sure that it was as good as we can make it for our first one. We played a really small venue in Folsom, and yeah, it was fun. We had a good time. We were the opening band, so I wasn't really expecting a whole lot.
Right.
But we had the biggest crowd. We got a really good response from everybody. The radio station was there, and they seemed to like what we did. So that was, that was all a plus. Like I said, I'm not really expecting anything, but out of that, we got another show.
Oh, well,
so we have on the 17th of next month, we play down in San Jose, and then the 18th, the following day, we play in Davis.
Right.
So
San Jose, that's a big market compared to Folsom.
Yeah. Bay Area is a little brutal though. If you're not either techno or super heavy metal, really metal kind of stuff, we kind of get lost in the mix. So we'll see how we do. I think we're on the bill with a bunch of metal bands. And we're heavy, but we're not really metal. So we'll see.
You do some singing, right?
Yeah, I do guitar and vocals. We're a 3-piece, so I do guitar and vocals in the band.
Do you write the songs?
Yes.
Do you have any racing inspired songs?
No.
Are you ever gonna do a song about racing?
Probably not. Probably not. It would. Yeah, I hate to make this. They always sound cheesy. So I can't do it.
Not gonna do it. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I haven't done any driving in a week. So and it's actually longer than that if I go back to when I got to drive the way I want to drive. So going back in time, 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas at a trade show for a week. The only driving I was doing was like in a full motion D box with like iRacing with a bunch of driving aids on, and combinations that I wasn't necessarily, and just running alone, hot lapping. Not all that inspiring for me. It was a great setup for the trade show, but for me, it's like, well, I want to race the things that I race,
Right.
And then I come back from that, and I was sick, and the only driving I got to do was I ran a Lionheart race in terrible condition, and crashed early, which was probably good because I didn't have the energy to be there all night. But it was a horrendous showing, and that didn't make things good. And then that was the last I had touched a car until Hot Lap Pump Day with Rick Motec on Wednesday. and I think I drove for about 3 hours of the 4 hours. I think I was in the car driving. I was pretty gung ho.
Right.
Yeah, it was a good car combination, car track, and I was having a lot of fun. And I'll talk more about that at the end of the show, actually, because it leads to something I want to talk about. But maybe we should get through some news.
Right. Hey, if you guys have any questions or comments, like I see Devin says, Billy, bring on the sim racing parodies. Come on now. I can. Oh, it's. I hate being one of those people that are like, I'm such a serious, artiste, which is rather ridiculous if I do say so myself. But I'm just the music part of me is an outlet, and it's usually not about happy shit. So
and racing's happy.
yeah. So everything else I try to do that I have a good time with, and the music kind of gets out all of the garbage for me.
Right.
So
if you ever did do one, it would be like the worst day of racing I ever had.
right. Smash wheel.
Yeah, there you go.
How I was taken out in a public multiplayer lobby. Yeah. But anyways, if you guys have any questions, or if you have any comments, just at Shaun or I in the chat so we can see it, and we will. Thanks to everybody that came out in chat last week for the live show. I quickly threw it together. Shaun actually helped me with getting the show notes together, but he just couldn't do it. So thanks to everybody for hanging out in the chat for last week. And it definitely made it not quite such a boring show, being able to talk to everybody, because everybody was really interactive, which helped a lot. So I appreciate that.
It was fun. I watched it.
We're on. Yes, you were. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. So any of those podcast apps. It takes me about. I actually am editing the show now, so it takes me about a day or two to get it on those services.
Forza Hopper, the perfect name for a metal song.
Yeah. If anybody's super curious, the name of the band, this is about as car as I'll get, is called Skyline Red.
All right, I like the name.
That's about as car as it will get.
Is it about a red skyline in terms of what you'd in the sky, or is it about
it's a play on words? Like, for me, it means something, then it does something else than the other two guys. But I was kind of thinking of my favorite, my favorite color is red, and I was trying to think of something that was a little more universal, that a car person would know what I'm talking about, but everybody else,
general audience is going to go the other way.
Several layers to it. So
absolutely. I like it. That's cool. All right, look it up, Skyline Red. You'll find them. They played in Folsom. Maybe
they're on
pirated
Facebook,
some video.
If you feel the need.
All right, let's get to some sim racing news. Few things worthy of talking about. Haven't driven this version, but I did drive the Gen 1, I guess. But the Formula E Gen 2 is now out for rFactor 2 on Steam. They've been talking about this one for quite a while. And in real life, there's a pretty significant difference. Uh-oh, where'd Billy go? Billy, you here? Billy? Oh, give us a moment. We'll try to get Billy back. Uh-oh. Strange Friday. Here he comes. There he is. That was totally weird. Oh, and I have you as crackly voice again. Check my audio here. And since that's the audio I'm capturing. All right. You back, Billy? There we go. Sounds good to me. Rush, Red Barchetta. Yes, of course, Joe. Joe Grover. Oh my God, Joe Grover. How you doing, buddy? I haven't talked to Joe Grover in long time. Hope all's well, buddy. All right, so there are a lot of differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 Formula E car in real life. I think that's a big part of the reason why there's a new version for rFactor. This is actually the cars they ran. No, not this car. I'm sorry. 250 kilowatt, which is equivalent to 335 horsepower in a futuristic looking Formula One shape. I've never heard, but Billy, do you know? I don't think that arrow is like highly functional on the Formula E cars. I think it's looks really wingy. Oh no, I'm not seeing your audio. Man, we're having some fun today. That's weird. I think you should be back.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Discord freaked out, and then it freaked out OBS.
But now I have you a scratchy voice again on my end.
Sweet.
We'll see what happens with this. It might have just cleared up too. I don't know. Anyway, some cool pictures of these cars. I'd asked, and I don't think this arrow is like big arrow. I think this is.
Yeah, I don't know how functional that arrow is. I'm sure it does something, but I think it was more to really make the car look cooler than the Gen 1 car, at least.
So more entertainment and more coming. Somebody, we were talking bang for the buck. I would say that somewhere between rFactor 2 and Assetto Corsa are probably the best bang for buck sims out there, because they're both off the shelf. When I call something an off the shelf title, I basically mean you pay $50 and you own the title.
Right.
Versus say like the iRental concept. So very affordable, and this is some content they've been working on for quite some time.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be Are you going to try this?
I'd like to. Last time I drove the Formula E, it is. I mean, you can talk about like different car designs in terms of like a mid-engine or a front engine, rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, and the handling characteristics. And when I drove the Formula E original, throw all that out the window, because we just invented a completely new handling type. Because, almost all front engine, rear drive cars handle alike. Not identically, but they all handle in that.
Yeah.
Formula E is with the regenerative braking, with the way you can't use the engine in the same way internally speaking on what the car is doing, because the sounds don't match what you're accustomed to.
Right.
Makes it a very difficult car for me to drive, actually. And I think that might be the case in real life too. I think I don't think, like when go-karters switch to full-size cars, not all go-karters make the transition well, because you do some things in karting that you don't do in a real car, and vice versa. And so the only ones who can really transfer well are the ones who can let go of certain karting habits, if that's all they've known. I think Formula E is one of those kind of things also. Like, maybe a guy who's only a 10th place driver in one series might all of a sudden just be like, this way the car drives and me gel. And all of a sudden you're like one of the best, whereas maybe somebody who's one of the best might even drop all the way down to 10th or so, because they just don't get the way the car, they can't drive it to the perfection they could in other disciplines. So I do love that about the car. It makes it a fun drive, because it's a new experience if you haven't driven one like it. So, and I think that's a testament to the mod too, that I'd say that about Gen 1. I'm sure Gen 2 is even more distinct.
Yeah, when you talk about the karting thing, I never really raced karts. I've driven karts a couple times, and then, doing the indoor stuff I had done as well, but not like an actual at the track race kart. So then, I raced sprint cars and stuff, and when I went to karting, I had to learn a couple things, but I think in my case, it was much easier transitioning that way than if I had gone from karts to something else, because I could. Then it became, because especially a sprint car, you have to adapt so much. It just kind of like, oh, okay, I need to slow my hands down. I need to not be so forceful with the car, and just kind of let it do its thing and not get the tires angry, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it makes sense. Also, I wanted to point out they have a Leicester Special Edition. So this is a track. It's a fictional track that they've put some Formula E inspired stuff on it. So if you decide to do all that, it has there's a Leicester Special Edition track in there for you as well.
There it is. That's cool. let's see. Somebody was talking about, Davey was talking about watching Formula E. I have not had a chance to watch a race this year, but I actually wanted to. So maybe you can answer this for me, Davey. What are they doing? I'll use the word goofy, but I don't mean it in a terrible way. Are they doing the goofy power-up zones where you like have to leave the driving line to get the power-up zones instead of the fan boost that they used last year to, do that? That's something I was wondering if it was going to play into any dangerous racing or any kind of, on-track mishaps. I see you're trying to adjust your audio there, Billy. What? Was that a give you a moment? So anyway, cool stuff. Formula E for rFactor 2 now available. And you can check it out for yourself. If I get some time, maybe I'll get out there and do so. 0 to 100 kilometers in 2.8 seconds. All right, let's move right along. See, Billy will jump in.
Oh yeah, no,
there you sound great.
Yeah, I had to reset the box. Reset the box.
All right. All right, everything should be back to normal. All right, so next up, you've been more on top of this game than me for sure.
Oh yeah, we got Sweden. Actual snow coming next week.
That is real snow. That looks like inches of snow mashed down with cars having driven over it for quite some time. I like that.
Yeah, it looks cool. I'm hoping that it's as pleasant a surprise as Monte Carlo was. So I really enjoy the snow stages. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, we can make some arguments about why it wasn't included to begin with and why you have to pay for this. But nonetheless, if you got the pass or if you want to purchase it separately, it will be out next week. Probably in the States, it's going to be like Monday night or Tuesday. That's when I imagine it would be.
That'll be cool. It's something the game has needed, in my opinion. I mean, we've talked about it and questioned, the rollout procedure. I'm not a big fan of the rollout, so whether it be a Competizione or dirt, I don't mind some DLC packs, but give me the game. Give me,
Well, I mean, there's a balance there. I think if people thought that they got a complete game, then I don't think stuff like this would be a big deal. It'd be because
right.
In a marketing and business perspective, this is a good idea because it constantly keeps the game out in front of everybody. It keeps it relevant, so it inspires you to try it again. So doing that, this isn't bad. I think the rub is that I think a lot of people, especially if you played the original Dirt Rally, felt like it wasn't a complete game. And when you're giving us stages that were in the last game, I mean, they still, if I remember right, they still have Germany after this.
Right.
To do it. So, yeah. Nonetheless, it'll be out next week.
Yeah, snow fun. That'll be good. RaceRoom having a big Easter sale, so 30% discount on individual cars and tracks, 25% discount on the essential packs. So we were talking bang for buck sims. Even though they charge you for content, RaceRoom's really pretty affordable. You're not going to go broke trying to buy up a bunch of content on RaceRoom, that's for sure.
And if you go and buy the VRP directly from RaceRoom, I think they give you a special. It's actually, you get the VRP even cheaper.
Let's see, I just clicked
if I remember right.
Yeah, I think it mentioned it. It didn't pull it right to that one at Virtual Race Points VRP. Here we go. There we go. Boom. Yeah, they're discounted as well. So you could buy like the VRP 10,000 for $64.99 versus normally being $100.
And then you can get extra liveries or car. That Easter sale will get you all the content, but it doesn't. I don't think it gives you every skin. So if you want different skins, they do charge for skins. That's a whole nother topic, but yeah, they do. Devin asks, says on the topic of Dirt Rally 2.0, did you notice a change in force feedback this last update or the one before? Missed a couple, but it feels better, and I don't know if I've just settled in. As far as I know, there's been no change. So we still haven't gotten a force feedback update. Not that they've let us know. And then when somebody asked in the forums, like if you went to Twitter, clicked on it, they still haven't addressed it yet. They said, nope, force feedback patch is still not out. They're still working on it.
I don't understand. Never mind. But we could turn that into a 2-hour discussion right there.
Right. Well, I understand. On one end, it's ingrained in everything, right? So now they have to go back through everything to make sure that the changes that they're making actually do something. So I can understand it's a long process, but it's frustrating that it wasn't taken care of in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where I think that's the frustration. Why did you do that?
Let's see. What else? Oh, I know what's next. All right. So Fanatec has a video that came out last few days. This is a second video in the course of the last couple of weeks as we await for the Fanatec podium release or shipments to happen. Anyway, they did an unboxing and quick look video of the podium. I don't think there's actually any new information. I guess this video kind of rubbed me a little wrong. I'm not going to go on a whole rant here, but I'm just thinking, you guys are like 6 months behind. I really don't care about watching you unbox your own wheel at this point. I would like to see everybody else unboxing theirs at this point. And it's like, to me, it's almost like a rude tease, and it's like, I have $1,600 out there that's been out there since November, I think, maybe September. And now I'm kind of like, I don't care about you unboxing yours. I would like to unbox mine already. So yeah, I don't know. I was kind of like, that's cool because unboxings are fun. I am not going to knock that concept. It's certainly in their prerogative to do it, but it's like, where's mine? I'll unbox it. Thank you. Anyway, but they had an unboxing video. So they say that the first batch pre-orders will be delivered on or before April 30th. Tick tock, 11 days. So,
right.
All right.
Real quick, Germany to 20,007. I thought it was 2007. It's 20,007. If you buy the premium pack, he's talking about RaceRoom for $74.99 VRP in R3E. You get every car with it. Every car with all skins and tracks currently released for the game. Keep in mind that does not include future content, but still a very nice deal, which it is.
Yeah, I mean, the way they do it might confuse people, but it's like, still, if you buy everything, you're still into what I would consider a retail sim. It's just a bunch of DLC that's been created over the years. Kind of makes it feel like it's a la carte, almost like iRacing, but really not even comparable in terms of the financing goes. You don't need to use the word financing to talk about any sim other than iRacing. Then all of a sudden it's like, I think there is a financing options available tab.
Well, I'm glad you are so happy with this video from Fanatec.
I am, because this is such a big deal. And I guess that's, if it was something I didn't care about, I'd be like, who cares? Right? But I care greatly and the whole world cares greatly. So it's like, okay, come on. It should be right there, minutes away from being right there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Scuderia Bassani, look at that. Boom.
Thank you very much.
Donation train. Thank you very much. Best show on the planet. I agree. At least I have the most fun doing this show. Yeah, and she's cradling it. I understand that. See, I guess that's the thing. So it's like a jealousy issue, really. That'd be fair. All right, is that enough about that one? You have anything?
Hey, I have no words. That was all you.
They might just send you one.
I don't talk about direct drives anymore. Let's see here. GT Planet. GT Planet does a really good job. They not only cover GT or Gran Turismo stuff, they cover all kinds of stuff, but they did have an article go up about GT Sports' next update to arrive before April 28th, according to a Porsche site. And it just comes down to Porsche apparently is having in Japan, it sounds like it's having some sort of contest. The event starts on April 28th, but there is another tab that has to get added. So they seem to believe that you can read the full article if you go there, but they seem to believe that there is an update that's coming out prior now to April 28th to make this whole thing work. There was a leak that they talk about where the website for GT Sport had a glitch and showed off a bunch of different cars that were not released yet. One of those happens to be the Porsche 962. So people are getting very excited. We'll have to see if that comes true or not.
It's pretty funny that TikTok, get that tab up. No, it's kind of funny that it's from the other direction that the news story breaks. You know, it's through Porsche wanting to promote their next big event. I dare say Porsche becoming the esports slut. You know, every day I hear of another Porsche specific event. That's awesome. I applaud you, Porsche. That wasn't a slam in any way, shape, or form.
No, going from where we were, where we didn't get it in anything, you know, because EA had the license tied up.
That's right.
It's nice to have Porsche in the mix again.
RTA, thank you very much.
RTA. Hey, congrats. Man, he hit the 5,000 sub mark the other day. So
awesome.
Go support RTA.
I need a congratulations. Here, we'll just give another one of those for RTA then. Thank you, RTA. Congratulations, buddy. You know, something that I brought up on Wednesday, getting back to the Fanatec podium, it is a cross-platform wheelbase. You know, you think of the DD world, and there is no DD that really officially works on a console. So that is a cool aspect. When I was talking about that on Wednesday, I was like, you know, 10 years ago, that would have meant a lot to me. But now I've gotten so specific in my setups that it's like, I don't really have a Xbox or PS4 setup. But if I did, I'd drag this rig out there. It wouldn't be my big rig anyway. Because those consoles, for me, reside at my television, not at my sim rig. But it is good. I mean, that's certainly a big bonus, having cross compatibility. So we talk about GT Sport. In theory, you could be competing in that Porsche event, well, within 3 days of it launching, because that'll be the 28th versus, or 2 days.
We'll have to see where that Porsche event actually launches, if it's only in Japan or if it's global. But that's where they're getting their info from.
Yeah, but it seems like the update would be for everybody. Or, I mean, it would be kind of weird.
Cross our fingers.
Yeah,
hope so.
It would be weird if they didn't, I would think. All right, what else? Our good buddy, F1, two-time F1 Esport champion, Brendan Lay, to make his single-seater debut. So we're seeing more and more of this happening at a really quick rate as well. But our sim racing heroes are getting put in real cars. I mean, Igor Fraga, we just talked about that, him running in F something, one of the open-wheeled. Brendan now getting his shot in one. We've seen Rudy Van Buren driving various McLarens, being part of that World's Fastest Gamer competition. We've seen Enzo Benito getting shots and drives. I think Brendan also did one of those, the Race of Champions. But our winning guys are getting opportunities now, and that is going to change the perception of sim racing. I think that's the other thing we talk about esport and how it will be a success or a failure potentially, or where it will go. But the one thing that's going on simultaneous to that is that it's being a big part of the acceptance of sim racing into that real life motorsport ladder. And 10 years ago, if you were to ask your average real life guy, hey, could a sim racer ever prove himself in the real world? They'd laugh at you. They'd scoff. They'd mock what we do. Right. And now, and I think esport is a big part of it, because it's the esport money and the esport attention that's leading to some of these opportunities directly. But not once has a sim racer not made us proud. You know, we translate or transfer instantly and very well, and we bring to the table a very keen eye for finding time on the track. You know.
Well, I think this is great. To go into a little more depth at Autosport, he's running the National Formula Ford 1600, and he looks to have at least 2 races in it. So one at Snetterton and one at Alton Park. And the owner of the team is pretty impressed. Says, his on-track speed is right with his other drivers. He hasn't seen him around other cars yet, but he seems to think that he's adapting really quick and he's showing speed. So I think it's great. I think anybody that has not gotten a chance to race a car, like actually go out and race, not hot lap, not just sit in one or get a ride in one. I mean, actually go out and compete, because it is it is a completely different story.
Yes.
Going from hot lapping to actually racing. And I think it's fantastic. Anybody that gets to do that, gets to make that leap from virtual to the real world, and those that want to take it, I wish everybody could do it.
Yes.
I've been fortunate enough to race, in the real world, and there's nothing like it. Like it's, I still miss it. So the idea that these guys or ladies get to jump into a real world car is fantastic. Like I said, I wish everybody got a chance to do it, even if they didn't end up liking it. I wish everybody could try it just to understand.
To understand the intensity.
It'll make it better.
Yeah. Well, and you think of any other sport, because almost everybody played some form of sport at some point growing up, male and female. And you get an understanding for the competition aspect of sport. When you multiply that with racing, with motorsport, it's like that same intensity of soccer, basketball, football, whatever you'd play, but now taking it to a sport that I just love so much, being driving cars, and being able to combine the two, is insane. And getting back to us getting out on the track, sim racers getting in real life opportunities, I dare say Brendan probably has more wheel to wheel or door to door driving time than any other rookie in the series. Doing it night after night, day after day in the sim, and getting that. I
don't really see. The only thing you have to be careful of is you can't make some of the same moves that you would, virtually speaking. So I think that's the only. He won't have a problem running around other cars, I don't think. It's just reminding yourself that the gap that you would probably go for virtually isn't a gap you should go for
right
in the real world. I think that's the only learning curve, really, that besides anything else that he's going to have to kind of change his thought process on. If he can adapt to the G-forces and all that, which he's already proven when he did it was the Race of Champions race, right?
Yeah.
So he's already proven that that doesn't bother him.
Right.
And some people it does. Some people get in a car.
Yep. And some people can't put a helmet on.
Yeah, this is not for me. But he's already proven that that's not the case for him. So I think he'll do fine.
Scott Holmes mentions when Gregor Hutu got his shot, and the guy's coming from Nordic Iceland, not Iceland, but Nordic Iceland of Europe to Georgia in the summer. And he got sick in the car and even threw up, but he still was running really good lap times. And it's like, so,
right.
Even when we're adapting to things we've never done, like putting on a helmet or extreme heat or things like that, we being sim racers prove ourselves very well. I'm doing a lemons race again. Actually, this is a lucky dog, but on the 5th. And I go back in my mind as to where that is that even racing? And I know they want to call it racing, but I'm a pretty honest with myself and the reality person. And it's like, there's so few limitations, and they do have 3 classes, keeping it in brackets or groups. But I'm not sure if it's really racing, because, you've done the outlaw dirt stuff where it's like, well, you guys are all in the same ballpark, and, when it goes green, it's like, sure, people get lapped sometimes, but for the most part, everybody kind of is, in that same group of time. Sure, you're faster guys, slower guys, but yes. Mm-hmm. And when I used to do karting, it was the same thing. So it's like the intensity. Well, why? Because if I was running in 3rd, I was on the ass of the guy in 2nd. And the guy in 4th was on the ass of me. And at every corner, at every braking zone, there was the threat and possibility of being passed, and you're looking for that moment to be able to make your move, and at the same time defending position. And that non-stop awesome intensity is what it's all about. For me, in Lemons, admittedly, you don't get that, because it's very rare that you're like that close to the car that you're in position with. Because number one, it's endurance racing, so things get very spread out. But because the cars aren't that evenly matched either, so it really is more. It's like almost like glorified hot lapping, because I don't know if I get that same intensity of the moment of racing, but I do get that same intensity of being able to drive a car over or on the edge. Because I'm trying to think, you're like, I wish everybody can do it. And I'm thinking about, well, Lemons is like the cheapest way you could possibly race a car. But then I'm like, but that's not even racing. It's
yeah, well, there's different levels to everything. And I don't, from the person that goes out and, for lack of a better term, hobby races like a street stock for an oval, or I don't know what the equivalent would be, maybe some sort of Mazda or little cheaper car for road racing, maybe like a Radical or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a cheaper car that you could road race with, or what I ended up doing was obviously I'd love to have a GT3 car to race, but that's not going to happen. And I got turned on to doing karting on big tracks, and they're not as, I run a 125 shifter whenever I get the chance. And it's a lot of fun, going on these big historic tracks that I thought I'd never get to set foot on, and you get to run them. It's just, all that in itself is really cool. And then, when there's 26, 30 of us lined up and you can feel the draft on a track that big and the air moving around, it's awesome.
Right.
And so it would be cool for those people that want to do it. I wish those people, there was a way we could give everybody a chance.
I do too. Like getting back to the Lemons, maybe it's not that same door-to-door racing, but one thing you definitely get doing that is, like, if you mentioned GT3 cars, but like if you're into like IMSA, like the endurance side of IMSA in particular, you can be in the faster class and get that rush of dealing with quite slower cars, and needing to plan and make your move against a car that has no fight against you, but you still need to time it and do it right. And that is, we've all done endurance racing. It's intense when that happens. And just the same when you're in the slow class, tolerating and dealing with these really fast cars that are literally pushing you off corners, making passes at times that you should never put a car in danger like that, but they're going to all race long. And that kind of intensity is through the roof. I think almost
that's where I went out a lot of times is I went from racing the sprint cars to the doing the road racing stuff. And so having a car sideways passing somebody isn't a big deal for me. There's 3 wide on the straightaway where you probably shouldn't go 3 wide on the straightaway. Right. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen?
Someone will lift.
I was having the last race that I got to run. There was 3 races in the day, and the first race I ran over a guy, chopped over on me, and I ran over his left rear wheel, hopped and spun and killed it, and you're not allowed to restart. You're not allowed to re-enter. So then the second race, I changed the brake bias. I had to come from the back, got up to 7th in like 3 laps, spun out and killed it. So that was race 2 done. And I was so angry with myself. I had to start clear back in like 26th or something in the last race. And I went through everybody. And by halfway through, I got such a draft. I had figured out the draft on the straightaway. I came up and was actually side drafting off of the guys. And we were going to the first turn, and it's a quick left to right, up and over. And I was neck and neck. And I'm like, I've had a crappy day. You're going to have to lift.
Yeah, right. Right.
I'm like, and so that's like, I'm not lifting. You're going to have to lift. And he did. So yeah, there's when you're dealing, and you size people up. Like when I was catching people, I would see where they're running, and you start understanding like the lines that they're taking, how aggressive they're being when they're getting past or they're passing other cars. So I already had an idea, like this guy's not going to defend really hard.
Right.
that's leading right now, so I'm just going to make him lift. And that's the cool things, but that's also things you can learn in sim racing. You can learn those things.
Yes.
And that's where it applies. So I think,
sure, you're in one of those moments and maybe it's even a dangerous moment ahead, but you're like, I am enough in position that he just better back out. Because even though I'm the one pushing the issue, I'm the one on the inside, I've now got my nose in here enough that he just better have the common sense to get out of it, because I'm not gonna, I fought too hard to get to this spot.
And sometimes it doesn't work, right?
No.
When you make the pass, you're a hero. Other times you're the jerk.
No.
Nope. So I've done both. Sometimes should have lifted where I should have lifted, and other times, sometimes I've lifted when I shouldn't have.
Right.
And I should have been more aggressive. And those are all things that you learn. And it's a little different when you're in the car. You know that, man, this is going to cost me a lot if I wreck, but you kind of have to throw that out the window.
Is there anything worse than when you've made the move, you've got the position, but it's now danger zone, and you both lift?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've done that.
Oh, I hate that.
I've had that one.
All right. What
Last
else?
little bit of news.
Too much fun. This is cool. This is just a story out of JR Motorsports. They tweeted it at iRacing, and there's a whole write-up here at JRM. That's Junior Motorsports, right? JRM, getting to know JRM driver Michael Conti. This kid, he's not a kid. He'd be offended by that, rightfully so. This young gentleman is absolutely one of the best. He's 22 years old, from New Jersey. I think he's won 2 times, if I'm not mistaken. The peak antifreeze, essentially. They changed the name as frequently there as they do in real life. It's, what was it, Sprint? Right. Then it was the Nextel. Now, no, I'm kidding. Way back when, it was the Winston. It was the Winston for like all of time, and then it got into the modern era of let's change the name every 3 years. Anyway, cool right up there. So if you want to find out how he got started in sim racing, what pushed him to the next level of esport, various questions and answer in a pretty long written article there. Kind of cool.
Yeah, and they must have some sort of, by the next article is in the same vein for the Wood Brothers drivers. So I wonder if there's like a little bit of a directive or maybe a little bit of a marketing push to get these guys, the real teams, to get their drivers known. But
I'm thinking this kind of goes back to like the whole thing that we talk about esport, but it's like, so these teams, Wood Brothers, JRM, they have marketing departments. It's not even just a dude doing, it's a department that does marketing for the team. And I'm just thinking, they're protecting their investment. You play craps, and I don't know craps at all, but I do know that there are certain bets that you can like insure or back,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like the how you really win in craps. And it's like same thing here. It's like they need to back their bets to make sure the bets really pay off. And I think that's a big part of what's going on, and why you're getting a lot of attention. Plus, it's outreach. I think I wouldn't even be surprised if you have NASCAR asking the teams to be as all in on this as they possibly can, because NASCAR, consider it an outreach program to millennials.
Right. They
need to find a way to have tomorrow's seats filled. And right now, I don't think there's a path. I've said this even for Formula One. I mean, I know Formula One is having great days. I know IndyCar's back to growing again, but to me, the whole concept is still on a timeline, and they have to do everything they can for the future today. If they exploit racing right now, they could suck all the blood out of the rock. They need to be investing in the future, because the heyday or the high days or the great days are perhaps behind us. So, I think that's it on the news.
Yeah.
All right.
That is all for the news.
I just pulled up the Rick Motec Hot Lap Pump Day, and I'll congratulate Christian Arana, because this guy was a friggin' machine that day, on a really, really well done win there. That day, somebody in the chat had asked, is Hot Lap Pump Day going to be a normal thing? Yes, it is. Every month, third Wednesday of every month, Hot Lap Pump Day. Pit crew, you guys, you are all welcome to join us out there as well. 4-hour event. It always starts at 3 o'clock Eastern, runs till 7 o'clock Eastern, and I always stream it. You've got 2 cameras down there on Rickmotech, and then this last week, we had Robbie Unser with us, like just in the booth. I'm hot lapping. We got Kevin Ford announcing the race, and Robbie Unser of, the IndyCar Dynasty family, the Unsers, 9-time Pikes Peak champion. This guy is a driving legend, and he was just there talking sim racing. He's there with Kevin Jones, they both do coaching, and one of the people they're actually coaching, this 11-year-old kid, Elvis, was there as well. So it was very noisy. We had a lot of conversation going on, but it was like, man, it was such a fun 4 hours because I'm, again, hot lapping, just enjoying doing what I wanted to be doing, and then have this great conversation, kind of like what we have here at the Beyond the Sim, and doing it all at the same time. It was so much fun, and it actually led to a few things that I actually want to talk about here today. One of the things, and Billy, I'm going to turn to you and ask you this, and find, maybe you have run into this, maybe you haven't, but one thing Robbie and I were talking about is how we, as drivers, will hit plateaus. And we'll get to a point where we're just like, man, unless I change my setup or do something, this is as fast as I am going to be, and I could do 100 more laps. It's not going to change anything unless, and that's the big question, unless. What is that unless? So have you experienced that, and what have you done to overcome that, where you've hit a plateau, you've practiced, you've done everything, you think you've tried everything, I guess, because if you've hit a plateau and you're conceding to that, then you're accepting where you are. How do you bust through those ceilings,
I've hit several plateaus. Again, not having a ton of racing experience and then jumping into a sprint car, I had a lot of these plateaus where I'd progress and then I'd kind of stay. And so one of the times, kind of breaking myself of one of those plateaus, was standing and really paying attention and watching. The particular track I raced at was Placerville. And what was great about Placerville is you could stand on the infield. It's only it's a quarter mile, so it's a short track, but you could stand on the infield during qualifying because we all got pushed into the infield, and that's where we got pushed off from. And so you would watch, and you could see all their hand movements. You could see when the brake disc would glow, because we used primarily, most of the guys used titanium for the rear. So you could see when the brake would glow, how hard they were using the brake, what lines they were taking, and why they were taking it. And it was new with a dirt track. It's new every time. So you just keep banking and go, okay, I need to do this. I need to try this. And then pretty soon you kind of throw caution to the wind and just try it. And then like, oh, okay, I understand now. I just got to refine. And you kind of keep building on that bank of knowledge. And then, you hit another plateau, and I got a different crew chief, and that helped because he gave me, my plateau was confidence. He was just like, look, you're giving a lot of respect to everybody on the track, which is great, but this is your racetrack too. That spot is yours. You need to take it. That's where you need to go. So go.
Can you repeat that? Everybody, I want everybody, because what you just said, man, a little buzzer went off in my head. And I'm like, man, it's cool to be a gentleman driver. But, man, that's my track, too. And that's my race to win, also. Anyway, just repeat that, Billy. That was so...
I was not super aggressive. I was aggressive when I felt like I could absolutely make the pass. But I gave a lot of room because I wanted people to respect me as a driver. I didn't want to tear everybody else's stuff up and that kind of stuff. And what he sat me down is, he just said, you are fast enough, but you are giving, and it's great you're giving respect, but the thing that's hurting you is it's your racetrack too. So when that spot is there, just take it. Don't go, oh, we might, but we might bang wheels. Go and bang wheels then.
Right.
That is your spot. That is your track too. Make those guys go around you. Make those guys work a little harder and take those spots. And when he did that, that's when I started getting top qualifier, fast times, and I had my best finishes doing that. I led main events, finished second, thirds, fifths, had my best finishes of my career so far. And even when he left, I took that. I learned a lot of setup from him, but B, I learned that mentality of I'm still going to be respectful. I'm not going to dump somebody. I'm not going to put somebody in the fence, but you know what? If I think I can make it, I'm going to do it. That's my spot. And when I was on my own, we still had good finishes. So those sometimes it takes an outside perspective. Sometimes it takes just analyzing what you're doing, breaking your routine. And in sim racing, even when I was learning real road racing, I followed somebody. If I feel like I'm only getting a certain speed out of it, I'm doing something wrong. If they're faster than me, it's one of two things. It's either me or the car, and it's probably me.
Right.
So what are they doing that I'm not doing? Like if they're pulling me down the straightaway, then okay, that's a car thing. Right. But if they're just got more corner speed, what line are they taking? When are they braking? And so, I still say it, running with you guys and learning from the guys in the sim pit and doing the races that we did made me a better sim racer just because I could watch.
Right.
I followed like,
you can follow Stan and be like, okay, look what he's doing, and
all you guys, I learned something from each one of you. And, like Joa, when we were running, I was terrible at
you can't learn from Joa.
But I was terrible at Loudon and understanding that, I'm completely not rolling the corner right. Those kind of things. That's what breaks my plateau in a lot of situations. So, yeah, I think the best thing you can do is either maybe have somebody with an outside perspective,
right,
break you of some of your habits, or follow somebody.
Right.
Try to break your. It's hard for us to break our habits because I don't know if I can do any more. I'm giving it everything, and then you realize, how is that guy doing it? Watching really, really helps.
Yeah. When we were doing this event, we were in the Formula Renault 3.5 at Laguna. And, I know Laguna too well, and this is where I'm getting at. I think I'm like, I've got thousands of laps at Laguna. Here's how I drive it. Doesn't matter what car I'm in. I'm going to drive it the same way. And so Robbie's watching me, and a few things went on, and I'm just going to share some of the moments that went on because some of it is personal and some of it is engineering. But he had watched me enough to see that I was doing pretty much the exact same thing every lap. Like I had certain intention at least. Maybe the car wouldn't always do what I wanted, but he could see what I thought was what I wanted to do. And him watching, I'll use entry into the corkscrew as an example. He's like, you're really cheating in, and you're kind of making your move for apex too early. You're flattening out the corner, and you're just not really able to hit the driving line from the car where you're positioning the car. I need you to get the car farther out to the right. And he was totally right. So now the next few times I'm trying to do it, I'm getting that car farther to the right, changing my attack angle for the entry into the corkscrew. And he never really backed off saying, hey, get it more right. But meanwhile, because I'm moving it right from where I was, I'm thinking, hey, I'm doing great. I'm moving it right. And I had some better entries. Anyway, the moral of the story is it wasn't until we were watching the finals and I watched Christian Arana have two wheels on the right curbing,
right.
that far right. Like he was closer to the dirt than, and I'm not even at the curbing yet because I'm still cheating in. And it was all of a sudden it was oh, that's what Robbie meant when he said get it further right. He meant all the way to the right.
Right.
And
yeah, that's something you've got to figure out.
Yeah. another thing, and I'm talking about toes because I think we talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of being an older or more senior driver. You know, I have more motor memory of just about every moment in sim racing than somebody who's 18 years old. You know, I don't think they can ever say that. You know, there's no 18-year-old who has more laps than I do. Period. But old dogs don't learn new tricks. You know, I have my set parameters. So I might go to a track and think, okay, well, here's my braking zone. Wouldn't want to push that too hard and change the norm, right? Or here's my driving line. I just described how I'm wrong on the entry into the corkscrew. Well, I'm watching a video on iRacing the other day, and it was one of the VRS drivers just straight lining over like a chicane style curbing set, and just like literally all four wheels in the air, but no cut, no penalty, and the car was stable enough to land and get traction and continue on. And I'm just thinking, you know, my brain with my preconceived notions of driving line might be one of those very plateaus, because I'm looking at it thinking, okay, I got to apex that one and then that one to get the most out of that and straight line it as much as possible, versus the audacity to just jump the whole friggin' thing if it's within the limits of the game.
Right.
And I guess when I think of the plateaus that we create for ourselves, those are the kind of things. It's like, well, did you really try every driving line? You know, I'll use Laguna as an example again. Turn 1, 2, I don't even know how you count it. I think of it as 1, 2 down there at the bottom. It is. But there are, it's like a million lines through 1, 2 at Laguna. But in the end, it was a completely unconventional line that was by far the fastest. It was like to literally ignore the first part and use that as just entry for turns. Like turn 1 doesn't exist at Laguna. You have a really late turn 1 that they call turn 2. And until you drive it that way, if you're hitting in that typical wide line apex 1, you just added like 100 feet to the corner, you know,
Right.
for starters, that you don't need grip wise unless you're in something blazingly fast. Anyway, I don't know. It was a really fun thing. And I guess that's why I'm kind of turning it on you, turning it on everybody, because I think we're all guilty of creating these plateaus. The other thing I'm going to say, just another takeaway, I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation here. Robbie, then, okay, so I'm doing the same thing every time, right? I'm really comfortable with my setup. And then he said, well, if there's one thing I'm going to accuse sim racers of being guilty of, it's that sim racers correct the car with driving instead of complaining of what the car is doing wrong. So, for example, we get brake lockup.
Okay.
Every sim racer on planet Earth is great at creating human ABS instead of making an adjustment that might allow the car to brake better. You got understeer.
That is real quick. Do you think that is a result of us? Because I've seen this comment before. Well, I don't use ABS and I don't use traction control. So do you think that is a product of that, of saying that, well, I'm trying to do all these things that I'm not using any assists or any aids, when in actuality, right? Well, and just in actuality, I mean, it sounds cool to sit there and go, I ran this without any ABS or traction control or stability management or what have you. My argument has always been they're there for a reason. They're tools. I mean, when I'm racing by myself, I try to race with what the real car
Right.
has. But if there's an advantage available to me, whether it be setup or assist wise, I'm going to use it if it's not illegal, you know? So do you think that's just a case of us trying to, like he said, we're making ourselves adapt? I've just heard those comments like, you can't possibly be faster with traction control. You can't possibly be faster with ABS. And maybe in some instances, I agree. I find myself being faster, but is that because my setup isn't correct? Or is that because I'm really finding that particular car just with ABS is slower?
Right. Well, I think you do need to learn to drive differently. So if you've always done your own version of ABS and you get in a car that has ABS, you have to really learn to find threshold braking again, because it does it in a different type of way. Same thing with traction control. It's like you need to learn how to get back on the gas in a way that maybe even allows you to rear steer. If you're used to no traction control, then you're accustomed to being able to steer the car as much with the gas pedal as you do the steering wheel coming out of corners.
Right. Well, and another thing real quick to take into consideration, maybe it is faster for one lap, but over the course of the race, are you burning off the tires more?
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to be a hair slower, but as the race goes on, maybe just a little bit of traction control keeps you from spinning that tire so much that over the course of a run, your overall time is quicker because you're not killing the tires as much.
Yep. I think that's very relevant. And so I think that we are guilty of correcting setup conditions, and maybe part of that is because we don't have an engineer crew chief at the ready. So it's easier for me to correct the behavior of the car with my driving style than figure out how to make it right as far as setup goes. I'm certainly guilty of that because for certain things I wouldn't have a clue on what to do to make the car better.
Well, and I would be guilty of this. I tend to just, unless I'm going to be in a really competitive race, if the baseline setup's good enough, I just run it. And I might make a few tweaks now. If I'm going to be in a competitive race, I'll take the last time I did a sprint car race. I took a while and literally went through all the setup changes in the car and made a setup for qualifying, made a setup for my heat race, made a setup for if I didn't make the main event for a B main, and made a setup for an A main.
Right.
With all the fuel levels and everything that I need. So I'm willing to go to that extent if I'm going to be in a really competitive race. When I'm kind of just want to get on and have just a good race, have some fun, or maybe just a group of us are just getting together and it doesn't really matter, then I won't take it so serious.
Right. So another thing that happened during this event, this is kind of a weird day for me that Wednesday. It was really eye-opening. So I was running a Downforce setup that I was really comfortable with. I loved the setup that I was running. Let's see, Pat Iannucci made the setup I was running. It was a great setup. So I'm running really consistent lap times, and I think Robbie had seen that I'd peaked. Again, that's when he was daring me to try certain different driving lines and things to find time that way. And as soon as that was sorted-ish, it's like, okay, well, we're not going to make any growth. Like, I could do 100 more laps, but it's not going to change anything. And I'm still sitting 7th in the leaderboard. And none of us are content with that, ever. So he's like, okay, here, try this. And he gives me a setup with, like, 0 downforce. Like, he dropped the car down to compensate for the lack of aero pushing down. And, the logic being, I am not running as fast as the leader, so obviously I'm not putting the downforce to use because...
That's a hard one to get used to if you're not used to downforce-laden cars. Driving the car hard enough
to use it.
To use the downforce
get the most out of it.
Is difficult all in of itself. So you may be making changes that are counterintuitive to the thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. And I think that's what he was... And he was looking also to, like, we got to do something to find time. So if I'm not carrying the corner speed with the downforce setup that Christian Arana is, that's a driver problem. Well, unless he can fix his driver, which wasn't happening over the course of 4 hours, I'm just being really honest here. The only other option was to find more speed out of the car. So now we have to lose that downforce and pick up straight line speed. So we tried this and I couldn't handle the car. And I went back to mine. And he gave me another one. It was a little bit better, kind of more of a hybrid between the two. Better, but I still just couldn't keep the wheels under me. And coming full circle on this story, at the final, Humberto Roca appeared to be driving a very low downforce car that was carrying more top speed than Christian Arana. But it was very hard for him to even control. Christian Arana had what looked like a much more downforce setup car. You could just tell by the way it was holding the corners. And he was able to be very consistent. But it just, it was interesting to see that they kind of were at the same thing. Like, how are you going to find the time? Is it going to be by being a better driver, or is it going to be engineering that gets the job done? And ultimately, it needs to be a perfect combination of the two, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget when I started racing the sprint car. Steve Kinzer is the king of the outlaws. You know, he was still driving at that time. And so I'm getting in the car, and these guys are coming over and trying to help, and they're giving me all these setup things. And at the time, my dad raced for years. And so my dad and my brother kind of go, look, I can give you Steve Kinzer's setup. You're not Steve Kinzer.
Right.
Just, you're not. You don't have the laps. You don't have the experience. You don't have the mental attitude that he has yet. So I can give you his setup all day long. It's not going to help you at all.
Right.
We need to do things that make you more confident and comfortable in the car, and we can work towards that direction. But if I give you Steve Kinzer's setup right now, all you're going to do is either crash or spin out.
Right.
Because you're not driving it hard enough, or you're not driving the correct line. You don't.
Right.
You're learning. You don't know where to go.
Right.
So as you're talking about your experience with Unzer giving you these different setups, all I can think of is, like, in my brain, Billy, you're not Steve Kinzer.
Right.
because you haven't found that line or that threshold yet. And so you need something to help you learn to get there. And then when you get there, then they can give you his setup.
Sure.
And you can start making gains that way. But until you kind of get to that point, they can give you the top guy setup all they want.
And it won't matter.
It ain't gonna help. It's not going to help.
And here I tried kind of the both versions. So I tried something similar to what we think Humberto is running. But, you know, Humberto Roca has better braking and trail braking skills than I do that allow him to slow down a downforce car and still make the corner. Whereas I just can't get that done, or it becomes very sketchy. On the flip side, looking at me versus another very, very, very skilled driver in Christian Arana running a more downforce setup, well, I wasn't able to go into the corner with the same confidence and hold 15 miles an hour faster that the car could actually drive the corner than I was even willing to put it into the corner to, or my ability to judge how much faster than I was going, because I never found that fast one. I found either that I was so comfortable, or I just still wasn't making the corner even with the downforce setup, because I just wasn't slowing it down enough. Because even though, yes, it can hold 5 or 10 miles an hour faster than I was achieving, well, it will not hold 15 miles an hour faster even in the hands of a Christian Arana, right? But that boundary, I wasn't able to find that range, like that differentiation, you know, and you know, I mean, and again, if we want to really improve our driving skills, well, really, I guess I needed to be skilled in my mind. You know, this is a 4-hour event, but it was a matter of when those braking zones were happening, you know, and it's like, can you back it up 5 feet without it being 20? You know, how accurate are you in your timing? And so, you know, and I always think that's an interesting game to play with yourself as a driver, to go back and look at the replays and see when you think you hit the brake pedal versus when in fact you actually did hit the brake pedal.
That conjures up a good story. Is when I first started racing the sprint car, I'm all like, man, I'm going out there, I'm sliding the car, I'm going around the track, and I get out of the car and I look at my dad. This is probably like after about 4 or 5 races in the car. I really think I'm getting it. And I look at him, I'm like, man, it felt really good. He's like, uh-huh. I'm like, what? He's all, what do you think it looks like? Like, what do you think you're feeling? Oh, man, I'm getting in there. I'm really hustling the car. I'm sliding through the corner. And he's like, how about you watch the video that Brian just took? He's all, because I don't think it's doing what you think it's doing. And sure enough, I look at the video and the car looks straight as an arrow through the corner. Like, I look slower than all hell. I'm like, oh my God, really? Damn. Like, my brain just kind of broke. I was like, oh crap, I suck. That's what I just said. I did. I sat there and I just said, this isn't good. Mm-hmm. And so it's always interesting to watch what you think you're doing versus what you're actually doing. And and again, it's another tool to help break that plateau. But I was actually embarrassed,
Right.
because here I thought I was doing really well, and I'm looking at it going, nope, still bottom of the barrel.
Right.
And just trying to understand, like, okay, well, you know, I go back to my dad. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? He's like, follow somebody.
Yeah.
You know, get behind. And with the dirt car, that's rather difficult, especially when you're new, because you got to grab about 1 million tear-offs. But he's just like, you've got to break yourself of what you're feeling. So he's all, dirt racing is a lot about feel, not a lot about numbers. And you know, and I was trying to compartmentalize the track, and okay, when I get to here, and he's like, dirt racing is not like that. It's all feel. Follow somebody.
I remember hearing you say that on Friday, how you on Friday when you were alone, you were talking about how you don't use braking markers. It's a feel for the speed, and the closing rate of that corner ahead is what's letting you know what to judge, when, and what to do.
I think when that happens, I just know that I'm connected with the sim, whatever car and track combo that I'm with. And when I have to start really paying attention to brake markers, means I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
And I think, you know, if we want to wrap this around to VR, I think that's the advantage of VR for a lot of people, is it gives them a better sense of depth, that they don't have to rely on braking markers so much.
Yes.
They can just look to the apex and understand the distance and the speed that they're going to make the apex of the corner.
Yes.
So while I'm not doing it in VR, I know that when I'm on my 2D screen and I feel that way, man, I'm really connected. And that was, you know, with those GTE cars in Project Cars 2 around Long Beach, it was cool. Like, I really felt connected to the cars around that track. And I noticed that I wasn't even paying attention to brake markers.
Right.
I was just looking at my apex going into the corner. And so that was a learned thing for me, though, because I was trying to be analytical and break it down and do all this. Cause, like, you know, we watched all kinds of racing when I was growing up. So you know, how I thought I was supposed to be racing was not accurate to the fact that that's not how I was supposed to be racing.
Right. You know, it's funny you talk about that feeling, and I wish I could say it was every time I drove, but it's not. And it was the same thing in karting too. There were days in the kart where I just felt like I was so in tune with the kart, that moment of initial braking was so solid that I would just bring that car trail braking into apex, you know, and it's like, and you just feel like you couldn't have timed it better, because the moment you got there, it was time to be rolling on the gas and go, 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 and just not even a wiggle. And then there are other days where it's just not right, whether it's the kart, the track, the setup, the conditions, whatever, but where it could even be downright scary, because the car is doing things that you don't want it or wouldn't expect it to do. And you get those oh shit moments that happen in racing. That's part of racing. Oh shit moments.
Well, yeah.
You know, but same is true in sim. You get those times where you're like, man, I drive this thing all the way to apex with perfection, you know, and I just feel every inch of the road. You know, I know exactly where I am at every moment. And there are other times, no matter how hard you try, you can't even make that apex you've been trying to hit all day long. You're still a foot off, you know. Just can't get that groove mentally, that in sync with the car, you know.
We've had a couple comments about braking markers, and I'm saying braking markers in the fact that I use those as a guideline. But what I find is that people stick to those brake markers, and if you're running a race of any distance, those change. So,
or they might get taken out if it's a roadside.
Yeah, you know, so you can't, in my opinion, it's good for a guide. But if you're running a race where any sort of tire fall off is happening, you're actually better recognizing. So what happens is you go into the corner, you notice that you miss it just by a hair, and you back yourself up. And I just find it's a little easier to not rely on It's not the same, but to a much more extreme, people that use the driving line tend to get stuck because they're relying on the driving line to tell them when to throttle up, brake, and coast, and they don't learn that sense of looking to the apex and understanding the relationship between the speed and the distance that's there to make the corner.
Right.
So I generally tell people learn the track without the driving line, purely because it can set up bad habits for you.
Mm-hmm.
Braking markers don't set up bad habits, but when you rely on them solely for everything, sometimes it actually sticks you. And while you can move, all right, I didn't brake enough this time, or I broke too early, now I'm going to move it a little further. That's fine for getting a general feeling or a hot lap in a car where everything stayed consistent.
Sure.
But
well, and in all
when
fairness,
the race changes, or when you're next to a car, you can't use the braking marker anymore.
Right.
Your trajectory is different. All that changes. So again, the brake marker is a guide,
sure,
not necessarily a hard line.
And what I was going to say also, in all fairness, it's not like you're not observing the brake markers. They're part of the whole image that your brain is processing. Sometimes it's when it went by in your peripheral. But it's all part of that spatial awareness that is really what part of racing that, they don't really talk about it unless they're talking proximities of cars. But spatial awareness is kind of the computer process that's going on in your brain. And Joe mentioned 3D vision. And enjoy your meeting. And no, I know you don't work at NVIDIA anymore. Joe Grover used to work for NVIDIA when they were doing 3D. He was a big part of that. And it was sort of like, it did exactly what VR did way back then using your fixed monitors. But in 3D, you were getting that spatial awareness where your brake zones started becoming a timing and speed and closing rate issue as much as a on-off point, like I think we do more of in the 2D world. We're like, well, here's braking start initialization, here's back off point, here's trail braking, here's completely off. And we can turn it into just a timing and a geographic location. But when you get into 3D, when you get into real life, that gets combined with a little of that just instinctive computing where your brain is like, I know corner speed. I know how much I need to slow down before I get there. That's why racers don't need speedometers, right? Because they know corner speed. The number's irrelevant. They know the speed of the car. They know how fast things are moving when they're at the rate that the car can handle the corner. So, all right. Gosh, I don't know if I have any more to talk. I mean, I could talk about that Robbie Unser. I mean, most of what I talked about today were things that got, here I am. I'll admit it. I'm the old dog of sim racing, right? It blew my mind to have so many observations made of me who I try to be realistic, and just they were eye-opening enough that I'm like, wow, I learned so much today. Because
so did you feel like that broke you of anything? I mean, you learned in that session, but did him giving you a hand or a coach, did that break you of anything?
Yeah, it made me aware of a few big things. Number one, I do take braking for granted, and I sometimes don't push braking nearly as hard as I could because I'm relying on old information, preconceived notions on where the braking point is based on, was I even in the same kind of car? It also made me realize that when I get to that plateau, the one way I'm not going to beat it is by trying harder. Like, trying harder is not, like, I understood when you watch the video and you're like, I'm just not pushing hard enough. That's different than trying harder.
Right.
I cannot reinvent a braking zone, and pushing 20 feet deeper and missing the corner is never going to result in finding time. A completely different driving line has a chance. You thought that was an early apex? Well, it's not going to kill you to try a middle apex one or two times to see if you don't get a better run out of the corner somehow, or I found like at turn 1, 2 at Laguna that I was leaving so much time on the entry that forget the exit of the corner. I had already given up 3/10, versus trying a different line and finding that I could enter the corner so much faster and not even change the exit. In fact, using Laguna as the example, it made the exit better because it put me in a better spot and a better rotation, whereas the early entry, not only was it slower, made me have to have so much patience to wait to be able to get back on the gas. And it was brutal because it was such a long time going under speed that I just couldn't do it, and I'd inevitably jump on the gas too strong. So, yeah, it also made me think that when sometimes I hit a plateau, that's also when maybe you do need to go back to the drawing board on the setup and just do something drastic. Just to see, drop that wing off of the thing just to see if you can even get it around the track. Because maybe you're leaving a lot on the table, and comfort. So, yeah, I think I learned quite a few things that I would be able to take and put to use the next time I'm hot lapping and feeling like I'm not making progress. I hope.
Well, yeah. It reminds me of one more thing that I learned is when you're actually in the race, you're not testing, you're not practicing, you're not qualifying, but when you're actually in the race, I tend to search for, I end up searching a lot, actually. But the one thing I've learned is only go as fast as you can go. So in other words, you see somebody else pull something off, work into that.
Right.
Don't just, if it's something vastly outside of what you're doing, don't just start there, like work into it, because it's no good if you crash.
Right.
But a lot of times you'll see, I've seen it where guys will just try something and then they just fly off right off the track because they weren't prepared.
Right.
Again, they went outside of our talent levels and just made a mess of what could have been still a really good race. You still could have had a really good result. So that's something that I've learned over the course of driving a while is I only go as fast as I know I can go. And especially in a road course, maybe a little worse over in this section, you're really good over here. So maximize this and minimize the damage over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same as, racing on an oval or driving dirt. Everybody's going to make mistakes. The really fast guys minimize the potential catastrophic results of those mistakes. They make a mistake and they correct it really quick. They make a mistake and they remember next lap, don't do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where guys may be quick, but then once they make a mistake, they end up making that mistake again and again because they're not adjusting. So it's all these things that you have to learn along the way. And again, it's good that you had somebody there to try and break you of certain habits.
Yes. And make you try things. So we were talking about the do you break when you think you break? And Robbie was talking about his personal experience at Indy, and at Indy it's a do you lift, right? Because you shouldn't lift at Indy.
No.
But how do you, for 200 laps, not lift going into one, especially turn one? And he's saying it's like he'd sit in bed at night psyching himself up, like, do not move that foot, and so sometimes it's, do you think you're doing what you're doing because you might be doing something different than you think, and sometimes it might be subconsciously, like, your body is taking over. I've been accused of the indie lift, and I'm like, do not lift, and then sure enough, that right foot just makes a little move, and
I call those safety lifts.
They are, but man, and I remember in the chat on Wednesday, somebody talked about using their left foot to hold their right foot down.
That's funny. Well, I remember distinctly, I had only run, I don't know, I've run a handful of races in the 410 car by now, and we went to Chico for the Gold Cup with the World of Outlaws, and I'm standing on the back straightaway, and they're out there running, and these guys sound like they're not lifting. And the track's heavy. It's got a big old curb on the outside, and I'm standing there going, and I watched Sammy Swindell, another, one of the greats in sprint car racing,
Who's
and
back?
he doesn't lift. Yeah, he's always coming back. He's done that for years. But he goes out there and he doesn't. I mean, the guy just doesn't lift, and he just screams. And you're watching it, and I'm like getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. Like, he's physically, you can see the speed that guy's carrying, and you're just like, holy crap, I've got to do that. and my crew chief at the time looks at me. He's all, you can do it. I don't want you to think about anything else. Just run it. And I go out there and I did the same thing. So the first lap, I did a safety lift. I did a safety lift going into 1 and a little safety lift going to the 3. And with a sprint car, you drag the brake. That's what keeps the suspension loaded. And the next lap, I'm like, well, I had a decent lap the first lap, and I pulled my foot off of the brake completely. And in a sprint car, you're sitting up and down, so the brake hangs down and like this, and your foot rests on top, and then it pivots away.
Okay.
It's not like a regular brake pedal. So I completely take my foot off the brake and just hold it up in the air, so I don't even think. And I just resolute leave my foot in it, and the car, I'm either going to make it, or like turn 3 and 4, there's a Costco like way out. I'm either going to make this corner or I'm going to end up in Costco.
Oh, yes.
And the car's stuck. And that's part of confidence. And that's part of, again, somebody breaking you of that mental block. If he hadn't have reminded me, hey, you can do this. Don't lift.
Right.
Let the car do what it's supposed to do. And sure enough, I think we qualified 3rd or 4th at that night in the Gold Cup, which was, I was ecstatic. I was like, holy crap, look at that.
Jerry kind of quotes Days of Thunder. You have a special set of staggered tires. You can hold the outside. That's you have to cheat. You have to trick the driver into thinking he can really do it. Oh no, we got special that wing you got, Billy. We put a little extra wicker on there, man. Full throttle. In fact, if you don't, it won't work.
Well, he did the best job at getting me to recognize, it's my track, and getting me to recognize that he was like, his thing was, I don't want you thinking about this. You just go out and drive the shit out of the car. That's your job. You don't think about changes to make to the car. You don't think about anything else. You go out there and you run this thing as hard as you can make this car run, and it will work. He's all, I promise you, the car will stick. And there were nights that I could do it, and there were nights that I wasn't so good. But by then, my wasn't so good was like running 8th, 10th.
Yeah. Devin's throwing out the other ones. Eau Rouge at Spa, the Kink at Road America. Yep, there are a bunch of these. Don't you dare lift that throttle.
Yep. Yeah, and it's nice in sim racing. You can test that, right, without threat of bodily injury.
Right.
so we get to test those boundaries and see what the car will and won't do. But you've got to realize you've got to try that stuff. And again, sometimes it just takes somebody snapping you out of it. We all have our own mental blocks, and maybe you don't have that mental block, but maybe you have, a lot of this is mental.
Sure.
A lot of this is up here. And I consider myself pretty good in that department, but I still have these mental blocks, and having somebody there. I mean, engineers and crew chiefs and all these people, that's what they're good for.
Right.
A lot of it, in my opinion, is not, you hear like the famous Raikkonen line of, I know what I'm doing, leave me alone.
Right.
But their job is, we can get stuck as drivers, and their job is to break us of that.
Well, and truthfully, they, in the modern motorsport era, they know more of what you're doing than you do, because they have the data to prove it. It's like, oh no, that was 18 degrees of steering input, 18 on the nose. I don't know if that's a real number, by the way, but I'm just saying they know precisely what the driver is doing. So awesome. Well, fun topics today. If there's anything you guys ever think that we should be discussing, half the point of the Beyond the Sim is just talking racing, sim racing, how they overlap. There is no topic that isn't perfect for this show when it comes to talking about cars and racing. So if there's anything you should ever want us to talk about in discussion, let me or Billy know for sure. Be sure to subscribe, thumbs up, like, tell a friend. Tell a friend is a big one. Tell a friend what we're doing so we can continue to grow. I'm going to mention one more time, or at least today, that all of the Beyond the Sim episodes are on SoundCloud. Where else are we, Billy?
Stitcher and iTunes.
Stitcher and iTunes. So if you want the portable version, listen to it on the train, on the plane, planes, trains, or in the car. You can do that. And anyway,
we do have a couple questions.
Oh, questions. Hit us.
Yeah. So Todd gave us one. He says, with Forza 8 being developed now for Xbox Scarlet, so that's the next gen console coming out for Microsoft, will console racers need new gear for new console?
Gosh, I hope not.
So what do you think, given by past
I don't. Oh God, Microsoft is so questionable when it comes to this.
Well, Sony's even worse.
Yeah.
Sony really doesn't like those third-party stuff. I hope they don't.
I hope they don't, but I don't think we could take that for granted, because in the past we've seen that be a problem. They're so into their licensing deals, and for Fanatec to do the chip in the wheel to make it Xbox, that's very specific. Will the next gen honor that chip is basically the question. I would guess no. I think at this point in time, 2019, the financial structure of the world that we're in, no. I think there could be a very good chance that you could need new hardware, and that is, again, one of the advantages of PC sim racing, is our hardware is taken a little more seriously, and with it, they're not going to make you reinvest in a $2,000 or $3,000 steering wheel. When you're talking plastic $200-$300 wheels, they don't feel too guilty about that. So, I guess would be no. I hate to say it now that I'm really put on the spot.
I feel a little more confident in this generation versus our jump from the 360 and the PS3 because the architecture was different. I don't know. I will say that with confidence in the PlayStation. I'm not positive on the Xbox side. I know it's a little different, but basically we're all kind of using that same architecture now, and hopefully that they don't. And I've been just brought up, remember Sony and Microsoft make more money off of controllers than the consoles.
Yep.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the PS4. They just released specs on the PS5, by the way. So PS4, they actually made money on. PS5, they said they're not going to make any money on again. So, I've been saying, they are relying on those controller sales and software sales to drive money towards them. It's a loss leader.
Yep.
My hope is that because the architecture really isn't changing a whole lot, theoretically speaking, between, as far as I can see, I'm hoping that they still allow those devices to work.
It would suck if they didn't. It really would.
Gosh, you just burn so many people. I mean, I think, if I remember right, Xbox with the Xbox One, rather, Microsoft with the Xbox One had it so where you couldn't use certain headsets and stuff, and you had to use their own. And then finally they kind of opened it up.
Yep.
If I remember right.
Yep.
So hopefully they still keep that mindset that just leave it open. Don't piss off your fan base, please.
Yeah, mass backlash has made them change. That we've seen that too. So maybe it's something they'll try, but if the people are gonna revolt, maybe they would turn around and change such a bad decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's been proven they did it right. Remember when they were talking about the Xbox One and all this stuff, and then they backpedaled because there was such a big backlash on the way they were gonna use games and stuff like that. So
yep.
we'll see. Good question. I hope I hope it doesn't. How about that?
I hope not. Yeah, seriously.
Right. K Sim Racing. This one's directed to you, Shaun.
Okay.
Have you been watching the announcement of PewDiePie and DLive open content streaming site? Do you think it's going to force YouTube to change the way they do business and copyright rules?
Well, I am not super on top of that story. I've heard about it. Whether it's that group or any group, as a YouTube contributor, anybody that forces YouTube to be better to me makes me happy. So whether it mean better service, better bandwidth, more ad revenue, any of the above, any force. Now, I've been asked by people like, am I ever going to switch platforms? Like, would I go on one of those? And it's like, well, I'm not big enough to do that because I need to expand my audience. Those guys have millions of subscribers, and therefore they can be a little more casual. They're going to be able to migrate a good portion of their crowd and be the backbone of these new systems versus me. Right now, I'd love to, because YouTube's kind of, if I think back in time, YouTube has gotten worse, not better, in a lot of ways. The revenue has gone down. My stream qualities have not gone up. In fact, I'd say they might even have gotten worse in some ways over the last couple of years. But so yeah, I hope somebody pushes them, and then eventually I'd even be willing to leave depending on things. But yeah, like the European copyright, I've heard some really scary stories of what's really about to happen. And I'm not sure we're even at the beginning or at the end of it because it's so severe. But I've heard is like if you put an image up, that your stream could get shut down. You use one frame of video or imagery or audio that you're not the owner of, and they will pull your stream, which is really scary because, especially if you consider yourself a media site, where there are rules that extend the media that aren't necessarily being extended in this wild, wild west we call streaming.
Well, and if you've had Facebook get into the game, and you've had a lot of other places, I've watched that announcement, and it's only going to benefit him. I don't see it gaining too much traction. It'll probably affect, like Devin said, it probably will affect Twitch more, if anything.
Yep.
But I don't even know that's relevant. The problem is, and I've said it, when you were really getting into streaming, is same thing with like Jimmy Broadbent, or you've built a home on YouTube, and so it's really difficult to transition that away, because you will lose people.
Yep.
And the amount that you gain over there you're not big enough. We're sim racing.
Right.
Not just you, but
combined us all.
I would say Jimmy and those guys, if they went to Twitch, they would get some. I don't know if the new people that they get would make up for the people that they lost, though.
Right.
And it's a different environment. You have to kind of feel these things out. Maybe you're more of a personality. There are different personalities for these platforms. Maybe you're more of a personality for Twitch. You have to understand where you lie. And as far as DLive and the open content streaming, it's great to have competition. It's so hard to get a foothold. It's so hard to get in the door, and they're trying the best thing that they can, right? They're getting one of the biggest people that they can possibly get over there.
Right.
But when he's done with that, it's only a certain amount of time.
Right.
He's going to make a decision. Is this beneficial? He's not going to stop making stuff for YouTube. It's just specific streams
are going to be over on
are going to be
platform.
Exclusive to DLive.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know how much it's going to affect anything, really.
I agree, but ultimately, I mean, competition usually works out best for us. Being that we're on the consumer end of things, I'll always encourage competition. So yes, that's my quick answer.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice to, but it's scary at the same time. And you so more than myself.
But like, I think back in time, we were on stage 6 before we were on YouTube. And the reason for it was because stage 6 was the first place to allow for 1080 streaming. or videos. This was before
Videos,
streaming. And then it was a few years later that YouTube got hip to it and allowed for 1080. And so we switched because it was a much larger platform. But if it hadn't been for others pushing them, they might not have gotten to 1080. So like right now, one of the problems I have on a race stream is like a 5K cap on bitrate. And I might need more like 10K to stream 3 or 4 cameras and everything that I want simultaneously. Sure. So right now, there are still things that could be improved, and it could be a different company that pushes YouTube, which I probably would stay with, to hopefully up their bit rate. In fact, right now it's Twitch that's actually slower than YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it could be good. Could be good, but not for me yet.
Right. Cranky Pants asks, AI aggression levels in Sims, finding that fine line between them being competitive versus complete boneheads. Thoughts between Sims like AC, ACC, P-Cars series, RF2, R3E. So only some of those have adjustable aggression. R3E does not, if I remember right.
Can you assign aggression to one car, one driver, one AI in particular? Like, could you like, I want my Dale Earnhardt, so that guy's always going to be super aggressive.
The only way you can do that is with Assetto Corsa and the content manager. You can do that. You can assign specific skins with aggression and difficulty level, which again makes it like a complete brand new game for me in a way for offline racing. It really is fun to, like you said, if you were doing like a historic race with Dale Earnhardt, you could give him like really high aggression, and you could give him 100% difficulty and go out and theoretically try to beat him, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah,
I don't think these other ones do that, but
and then your like Mark Martin would be kind of more reserved, but he's going to finish every race,
P-Cars I know does that aggression level. I always find that RF2 seems to have, I think with the updates that they've done, even though they haven't changed the AI, I think it's kind of, with the cars, it's kind of broken the AI, because the aggression level doesn't seem to do a whole lot. But for like P-Cars, for AC, I haven't tried ACC yet. I'm always kind of in the 40-ish level. Seems to be a good place where they don't drive like complete morons, but will still take the position. So R3E I think it depends on the car. Sometimes their aggression's just right. Sometimes their aggression's a little too much.
Speed Force asks what we think of Assetto Corsa Competizione now that it's closer to consumer release. May 29th is the full version release, I believe. I mean, for me, it's still extremely short on content. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm okay with a single make or single class GT3, and single series. So if they can give me the whole Blancpain schedule and the liveries and the cars, so that I could watch, again, this is my big thing, what I watch them do on Sunday or Saturday night, I guess. I want to be able to emulate in the sim. And the closer they get me to that, the happier I'm going to be. I'm really okay with a single make series type game like they're designed. I'm optimistic for DLC that might expand on that. So whatever, name your second series and release that. Whether it's a new game or a module to the engine, it wouldn't matter too much. But yeah, I mean, I'm very, very optimistic is what I'm getting at right now. I still feel it's just short on content. So I've kind of not really been making a big deal about each car, each track. I will make a very big deal about its full release in May. That's for sure. And I'll be very happy to drive it and probably even get some kind of a racing series going very quickly, shortly following that.
Yeah, I mentioned it on last week's show because that's when they had the announcement for the release date, and I I'm optimistic. I've heard good things about since they did the 0.7 update. I don't know if we're going to get anything more. The only thing that worries me is maybe a balance of performance problem if they don't release the cars into the wild before version 1 goes out. But then again, I guess it's no different than a developer and publisher releasing a game without any early access and then fixing it afterwards. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. I will get it. I'm gonna get it. And beyond that, I mean, I haven't touched it because I don't own it, so I don't have any thoughts in that regard.
The MXer asks if you're gonna do any more dirt oval racing.
Yep, we'll get there.
Really strange. And Joa says ACC will be released unfinished. You can count on that. All games finish that way.
Right.
Oh, your optimism, Joa.
We have time. We'll do one more here.
Okay.
Frank Zappa. Hi, Frank.
Nice.
What percentage of sim racers actually know how to tune? He was being a little cheeky here, but I mean, it's a good question just because I did that pause again. I saw what you guys were saying. I think that a lot of us don't know how to tune necessarily. And so then it becomes an issue of what crowd are you catering to? So how many, if you were to give a percentage, how many sim racers you think actually know when they start going into the setup options, know what they're actually touching to make it do the thing that they want it to do?
I'm thinking it's probably about 40%.
You think it's that high?
If anything, I think I'm too high, so I wouldn't say the other direction. But let's be fair. That's a really broad statement, because are you a Chip Ganous? You know, are you like a I can build champion level setup guy? Or are you I can make some corrections? So, like, I admit I am not a great tuner. When I say that, I don't know how to do big package changes. Like, oh, we're at this type of track, let's just, and like, I think the people who really know how to tune could do half the tuning before they even saw the track. Because they know the track, they know the conditions, they boom, this is the package we're going to need, and then we're going to tweak from there. I can't do that. But I can make corrections to a car that's not suiting me well. So does that mean that I'm not a tuner? Well, I can do some things. I can identify a loose car and make some corrections to tighten it up. Wow, I'm all NASCAR terminology today, I noticed. Like, all my references are NASCAR, which is really odd. But yeah, I can correct an understeery car and make it rotate more. But I can't necessarily make a car that's going to go from, 105s down to 104s, right? But I wouldn't, so I have to consider that I do have some awareness. I know what all the things on the car do. I just don't know which ones to work together.
I've seen a few comments where real life tuning isn't really the same as tuning in a sim, and they're right. And that goes back to being able to break a setup and that kind of thing. But it's in a sim, it's part of tuning. So I don't know. I feel like if I was being generous and saying that, okay, if I consider tuning the ability to make some adjustments to the car, like having a knowledge base to make some adjustments to the car, knowing what they'll do in the sim, I'd say we're probably about 25%. But I'd say we're closer to about 10 to 12% for people that literally actually know the ins and outs of the sim, and they know exactly where those hacks are to go. I know if I close up the radiator in the Indy car in a race that doesn't have damage,
right,
I'm going to go quicker.
Yeah.
It's those little things. So I'd say you're about 10 to 12% that actually know the ins and outs.
Sure.
They're familiar with how that, and does that transfer from one sim to another? Not necessarily. but they know how to look for it. And
Sure.
so, like I said, 25, I'd say about 25, maybe 30% of us know that what camber will do, or theoretically what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Changing the damper stiffness and adjusting the ARB. So those things, I think a percentage, about a quarter to maybe a third, let's say, of us know what to do.
Right.
I think there's a much larger percentage that know I should adjust fuel and I should adjust a gear ratio. I think that's probably around 70 to 80%.
Right.
But the ones that really get into the nitty gritty, I think that's a very small percentage of people.
I think you're right on there. I mean, I think we're all kind of forced to have some basic knowledge, because
you kind of,
even if it's just dropping the fuel out, right? I mean,
right.
But why are you running a full tank for a 40-minute race? So I think most people have some super basic skill that they can jump right into the deep end on. But I think I could do as much to hurt a setup as I could make a setup. But here's the other thing. Getting back to what we were talking about with Robbie Unser, I'm also a corrective driver. I've always been the guy who's just like, oh, the car's doing this. Well, let me do this to counteract it. And so then I start hiding the setup changes that need to be made. And I've always shied away. Well, because I'm that corrective driver, funny enough, I'm not even the best guy to test setup changes, because all I'm going to do is try to fix it as quick as I can in my brain and, on the track. And so I think I might know more than I even lead on to if I were to do it for somebody else who was really good at driving a car's changes. I don't think that's my best talent in sim racing. I think there are other people, you make a change and they'd come back and tell you what you changed on the car. Like, they know the setups that well that when they get back in the car, if you blindfolded them, you did some changes, they drive it for 5 laps and come back and be like, well, I can tell that you took some rear spring out of it. You
dropped the nose.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, how do you know? And it's like, well, because they really, really, really know their stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll do it. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out and
Absolutely.
Chat. Real quick, I got to ask a few people. Show went really well, especially for our first one. Small place, not a ton of people, but we had the largest crowd, and we were the opener, so that's always a positive.
Ooh, that always, and all the other bands knew that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're kind of like, oops, those people didn't stay.
Ooh, I guess they got the order wrong on this one, huh?
But yeah, it went good.
Awesome. One more thing I'll finish with, and we will bring the show to a close. This is sort of an early announcement, but starting May 10th, that's Friday, May 10th, we will be bringing back the SImpit Truck Series. This was a fixed truck series on iRacing. We'll run at 6 p.m. West Coast time, so 9 p.m. East Coast time. Open to everybody. Last season, we had too many people in the beginning and not enough people at the end. It'll be a first come, first serve basis, giving priority to our pit crew members and all you regulars for sure. But if you're looking for some racing, you'll find that under the league section. If you're not already, I show we have 70 people who ran last season, and you're all still part of the series. There's just now a new calendar. I could have called it a 1.5 mile series, because 5 of the 6 races are at 1.5 mile tracks. Everything except for what Iowa is 0.88, I think. But anyway, we just have a 6 race schedule. It's actually really close to what the real life trucks are running. So if you follow the truck series at all, you'll be able to kind of, if you tune in, you'll see them running. Hey, they're at Kansas, so are we. I did use a little bit of thinking behind it. But starts up May 10th. Just join that on iRacing, and we'll be accepting new members to that league, the SImpit Truck Series 2019. And I think tonight, just spontaneous, you heard it here first. I think tonight I'm going to throw up a practice race. Maybe we'll run tonight. We'll do Kansas just for fun. I'll throw up a hosted race, fixed trucks, 6 o'clock tonight at Kansas. So you heard it here. No.
Nice. Sweet.
Anyway, that's going to do it for me. What do you got going on this weekend?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't even thought about the weekend yet.
It's an open
I was so busy
slate.
with I was so busy with earlier in the week. Guess I'll have to be productive somehow.
I have to be super productive. I have to make up for 2 weeks of lost time in the next 48 hours. So that's my goal.
All right.
Anyway, that's going to
Sounds
do it
good.
for this one. Billy, thank you so much for being here. Pit crew, thank you for being here, being part of the show, and making it so much fun. Talk about sim racing all the time. I love doing it. Another great chat today. But get out there, do some racing. Have a good weekend. But that's going to do it for this one. This is Beyond the Sim. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. And we'll see you on the track.
See ya.